Hey guys, Engineer Wannabe here. Today we're going to be reviewing the Seiko SPB213J1. So I've owned this watch for a few months now. It won't be that long because I've owned the previous iterations of it. I've owned the 149, but I figured it was still worth doing a review because the way I review things has kind of changed. So I guess can't hurt to have another review of a similar watch. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do before we get started. I'm going to do a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing the Grand Seiko SLGH005. This is the white birch. So had it for a couple of weeks now, really enjoying that. Let's flip the camera and see if this is any good. I think I stole that from Jody. Weird. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and do the dimensions as usual. That is how we do these things, I suppose. Anyway, the diameter of this watch is 40 millimeters and it is 13.5 millimeters thick. It is 47 millimeters lug to lug, and the lug width is a very nice 20 millimeters. Now it comes in this oyster style bracelet. The clasp head is stamped, but the swing arm is milled, and the flip lock of the clasp is stamped as well. So you do get a bit of rattle with this watch. It's the nature of the beast. I think they get away with it because it's kind of a vintage styled watch, vintage reissue. Let's talk about the weight of the watch. The watch head itself is 83 grams. So on a strap, this has the potential to be a nice and light companion. On the bracelet, it becomes quite a beefy 160 grams. So not too heavy, but heavier than average, I'd say. I think average for me, size to my wrist, is around 140 grams. So here it is, 20 grams more than that. So you kind of feel the weight. The bracelet is very comfortable. I think a lot of that rattle means that it's flexible enough to be comfortable. So it is a really comfortable bracelet, but there is, like I said, some movement. It moves around in the lug opening, which I don't think is very acceptable, but it does do that. The lug to lug is extended a little bit because of those end links, but those end links curve down sharply. So I don't think there's a problem with it because it does follow the wrist, even on a smaller wrist. So my wrist is 6¼ inches in circumference, which is around 16 centimeters, I think. I'd say it wears pretty well on me. And some of you may disagree, but it does not have that usual Seiko, the Seiko magic. This wears like a true 40 millimeters, maybe even a 41. So considering this is 40.5 in diameter, I think that's acceptable. So it wears true to size. Let's take a look at this dial. The dial appears white in many press pictures, but in reality, this is a silver dial. It's a very beautiful silver dial, but it is silver nonetheless. And it has a sunray finishing, which is very pleasant to the eye. The indices are beautifully polished. I've heard a few people say that the dial is stamped. The indices are not applied, but they're stamped. Maybe they are, but there's a very crisp stamping if it is. But I have a feeling they're applied. It's almost too perfect. Maybe I'm wrong there, but we have a beautiful polished indices that reflect the light very well. They're almost black polished, so they work perfectly in this dial configuration because they disappear and appear black. And they're filled with Seiko's Lumibrite, which as usual is excellent. Lume here will last you the whole night through if you do charge it up. So very great lume. There's no applied logo. It's a printed logo, crisply printed, and you have the X, Prospex X with automatic and divers 200 meters. I don't mind the Prospex X, and it does look pleasant to me. I'm not sure why a lot of people don't enjoy that. But let's move on to the bezel. The bezel is a lacquered bezel, and it has a hardened coating on it. It appears blue in the pictures, but in reality, for the most part, it's either very dark navy or black. In the correct conditions, which is rare, you'll see it appear blue. But even in those correct conditions, only part of the bezel will appear blue. So it's not that vibrant blue that it appears to be in the pictures. So you can see you got a date at the 3 o'clock. And one gripe that quite a few people have brought up is the fact that Seiko, being compliant with the ISO standard, they had to put a loom plot on the 3 o'clock position. It would have been nice if they forego the date. However, they decided to put a mini loom plot, a very inelegant solution, unfortunately, but that was their solution. And once you see it, it's really hard to unsee it. That index at 3 o'clock is way out in no man's land, and it's not very nice. But once you come to terms with it, it's really not that bad. It kind of disappears into the background again, but you really have to come to terms with it. Okay, so generally I say the star of the show is the dial, but the star of this show is the case. If you take a look at this case, it's beautiful. So you have radially brushed top. So the case and the lug, the tops of the lugs are radially brushed. You have a beautiful bevel that runs down both the top side of the lugs, top side of the case, and the underside of the case. The brushing on the side is exquisitely done. Very beautiful brushing, very fine, well done brushing. And you have this very grippy bezel. The coinage bezel here is very aggressive, and it's very easy to operate, very easy to use. On the case back, of course, you have the usual Seiko diver thing going on with the Seiko wave, the Hokusei wave, or their version of it. And it's really a very iconic case. I know a lot of people say that. But this is the 62 mass case, or reinterpretation of that 62 mass case, and it's really something else. And you can't really do better. And the case is protected with a DeShield coating, so it does repel scratches to a certain extent. It is still possible to scratch the watch. It's not impossible, but it does look better for longer. A side effect of that is that it leaves this milky appearance, very slight milky appearance. The bracelet, we've spoken about the bracelet. The clasp is quite long. The swing arm and the clasp, it all amounts to be quite long, including this dive extension. But because this diver's extension kind of articulates, semi-articulates while the watch is closed, it makes this clasp usable. It does not, on a small wrist, I should say. It makes the clasp usable on a small wrist. So it's nice that they made that dive extension portion articulating. One small thing, though, is about that dive extension. Depending on where that sits on your wrist when this is sized up, it may rub against your wrist and cause a bit of a hot spot or some discomfort. So be aware that I had to move it around by exchanging links from the other side to either side and try to get it out of the way, out of the side of my wrist, the dive extension. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so the movement here is absolutely not the star of the show. I've had some really bad experience recently with the 6R35. This one is no exception. I can't even tell you what the accuracy is on this guy. To keep my sanity, I had to ignore it. But some days, earlier when I first purchased the watch, on some days this would be running at plus 10 seconds a day. Another day it would be running at minus 40. On another day it would be plus 25. So it's very prone to positional inaccuracy, or positional variation is really high. Overall, I think it still falls within spec, so I don't really have to go get it regulated, or I couldn't without getting them to, or without me paying for it. But this movement really is a bit of a bummer. That said, though, it is reliable. The track record of the 6R movement, this being the 6R35, the 6R movement has a really good track record, so it'll probably run indefinitely. When the time comes for servicing, you can just replace the movement, but you may get a good one. There are many anecdotal accounts of how someone's 6R35 has done really well. The problem is that it is a gamble. Another gamble is the fact that you might not get a bezel that lines up, and this is almost common knowledge now. The chaptering here is printed onto the dial, so it's very hard to get that wrong, but it's always good practice to inspect the watch before you purchase it, if that kind of thing bugs you. So those are the kind of caveats of this watch. Yeah, that's really it. There's kind of a short review, kind of a long review, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions about this watch. I will definitely try to help out, help answer them. Yeah, guys, I really appreciate you stopping by and watching this video. I just want to also say that time is short and we are running out of it, guys, and you are precious and you are of infinite value. There's nothing more valuable than you. No material item is more valuable than you, and I appreciate you. So I just hope you remember that. But other than that, guys, take care, stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.